All right. Hello. We made it. That was a close one. I went to launch, get ready to set up, and the system crashed, of course, as always has to happen, right? So thanks for joining me. This is day 2 of Virtually Expo. My name is Luke. I'm the Director of Operations of Portal Games US. Hope you guys had fun events so far. So today what we're going to be talking about is some personal stories, anecdotes, and basically my top 5 moments of working on Detective. So currently I'm the Director of US Operations. When I started with Portal Games, what I was doing a lot of is editing, translations, things of that nature. So Detective was actually the first project I worked on for Portal Games. So I'll be able to share some stories about that and kind of give a little bit of the back end and a little bit of the behind the scenes stuff. So I know we still have people coming in. I'm watching the counter kind of tick up a little bit. So we're going to give everyone just a little bit more time. If you guys have any questions about the kind of behind the scenes stuff of Detective, definitely throw them into the chat. Otherwise, let me know where you're watching from. I'm always interested to hear and see kind of where everybody's viewing from. So let me make sure that the screen here is still working. Looks like we're all set to go. Okay, and Bill Kennedy, absolutely you need to. Although you could play Detective on Tabletopia with K6 Suburbia, so you're more than welcome to try it out there as well. Northern Minnesota, hi, Northern Minnesota. So I'm from Florida. We've got someone from Northern Minnesota watching, and we're streaming for a UK convention, so quite interesting. Awesome. So let's just jump right into it. So Detective, with some background on kind of the what we're going to be going over today, is Detective was my first real start at Portal Games. So this was early 2018, late 2017. It was basically my trial when I moved from volunteer status and being involved with the company on a more unofficial level to more of a serious engagement and role within the company. And it was intense. So basically, I'll touch base on how that happened a little bit later, but let's get into the top 5 stories. So I must go into a few honorable mentions first. So the first honorable mention I have is checking the Board Game Geek ratings. So, and we're going to go a little bit out of sequence here, out of order, but that's all right. So you can see here, I just have an image. Actually, this was my first involvement so heavily in the board game industry. So what I was doing quite frequently is going onto Board Game Geek and refreshing the page every day. So let's be honest, a few times a day. So, and I have screenshot after screenshot of me actually checking Detective rankings. So let me make sure that my slide is working, because obviously when everything shut down, so did the slides. So that's what happens. But I was basically checking rankings every day from the very first listings. So when there were just a handful of ratings on Detective. So let me just pop right into there. And this was all right from the beginning. So I think we had, we just started right at the very top of the list. Here we are. So 31 ratings right from the beginning, and I remember again and again just checking and refreshing. So that's an honorable mention. It was a really fun experience, not one that I'm sure a lot of people get to have unless you're following something right from the beginning. But even then, as a fan, which I was before, you don't really have that connection, right? You don't have that emotional investment to the game. So, and just kind of every time, just new screenshot. These are a little out of order, but you can see here we're kind of climbing the rankings. That's the next story, so we'll get into that. But basically, now Detective has thousands and thousands of ratings. We are ranked in the top 150, 140. I don't know where exactly Detective lies today. I think it's ranked 140 and 27 on thematic. So a long way away from rank overall of 3,286. But that was a really fun experience, just kind of being able to do that. So the next honorable mention is playing Detective with real Detective. So I actually don't have any pictures. I was scrambling around trying to see if I had any pictures from that night, which I don't, so I'm sorry about that. But we actually played Detective at Stephen Bonacor's house, formerly of Stronghold Games, currently the podfather of gaming. So Detective has been played by many detectives, many officers. We've had a lot of them in testing, and we've had a lot of help from them. And since then, I've spoken to a lot, have played it, and they say they love the experience. Actually, caveat, some say they love it, some say they don't like it. And I'm noticing the trend is the age. It seems like someone who's a detective, and early on in their career, they're playing this game. They say, "I love it. I feel like I'm working overtime. I feel like putting in an overtime slip because this is fantastic." Some of the older detectives are saying, "I don't like this. This feels like work." So take it as you will. It shows that it's a really good simulation. But all of them were doing such a good job. But I remember playing with a detective. Those are all games I spectated, but I actually played during a session with a detective at Stephen Bonacor's house. And this guy was on fire. He knew exactly, nope, let's focus on this. No, we can't go down that lead. We don't have the background information here. And it not only impressed me by how well he was able to play, what was also impressive is how well it was written and how well the game was designed. That the skills a real life detective has and applies to the game actually ended up doing really well in the game. So that was really cool. That is kind of like an honorable mention for me. So now we kind of got to get into the top ones. So let's go into number 5, which is all of the fan engagement and fan images. So there's a lot out there. I'm just going to show you guys a few here. So just some of the images that we get, and I'm going to go fast, so spoilers aren't shown. But all of the pictures of people working on their mind maps. Man, look at that view. If I'm a detective working like that's the view I want to have. Pictures of donuts and coffee and whiteboards and setups. This is somebody who was near the North Pole playing detective. We've got this game in over 10 different languages now. So from all over the world, the different images, the different ways people are playing, the different mind maps, the comments, the feedback. Like, some of these are so cool, and I couldn't even find all of them, but it's like, look at this. This is awesome. I think this was a group that played at work during 1 hour break on lunchtime. So really awesome to see kind of these images and these pictures, and the different ways people are engaging, and yeah, I mean, that's got to be one of my top 5 things about this detective experience. And also just the convention engagement, people coming up and telling me about their experiences, discussing what kind of background music they like to have, discussing how many cups of coffee they had to go through to finish each case, things like that. I don't know, not many games that I know you can have that kind of experience and engagement with. So that's my number 5. All right. Going down to number 4 would be that image that I cut to a little bit earlier. Right here, right after this, is this picture. So this is BGG Fall 2018. Fantastic convention, my first time there, and that's David standing right there. At that time he was our volunteer, but now he actually is a member of our team. He's the head of sales and retailer relations. awesome guy, and you guys might have seen him on stream already playing some of our games, and I think you saw him yesterday playing solo Barbarian Hordes. But the reason I show this in a detective personal experience, hello Marino, is because I want you to pay attention to this right here, this lovely stack of detective. And this detective is strategically placed a little bit higher, and that's because I was sitting back there behind the convention. David was working hard. My wife was actually here with us helping too. They were both working hard, but I was back there translating LA Crimes. So that's the next experience. My number 4 is working on LA Crimes. So we'll go into a little bit later down the list with my involvement with detective, but basically. After editing and working on detective, I said editing translations is really hard. It's much easier for me, in my experiences, at least this is what I thought, was just from the very beginning, get the Polish text and let me translate that into English. Because when you're going from the start, everything is fresh in your mind. Whereas when I'm editing somebody else's text, it's easy to miss things, right? And you have that editing fatigue. I don't know, those of you who have worked on these types of projects, is editing and changing things has this, it's a negative neural path. So you're finding things, identifying issues, changing it, finding things, identifying issues, changing it. And that causes a certain level of burnout, right? So after a while, subconsciously, you're going to start seeing things and saying, okay, this is fine. No, this is okay. I'm going to let this one go, because it's just more and more and more, of this editing and changing things like that. So I wanted to translate from the beginning, and oh boy, that was a lot of work too. But nonetheless, it turned out great, I think. Also, always could be better, always could be improvement, but with what I had to work with and the time I had to work with, it worked out pretty well. So I was sitting back here editing the whole time. Right after BGG, my wife and I, we actually just got married not that long before. So we were actually going on our kind of honeymoon trip. We went to New York and traveled around, saw different museums, things like that. But unfortunately, editing had to be done. So here I am after a long day of editing, a long day of visiting museums, translating LA Crimes. So that's number 3. Number 4, excuse me. What did I miss in the chat? Coffee. Oh, maybe the beer explains why I'm so bad at it. Wrong beverage of choice, Captain. Usually I guess as a detective, who am I to say? But coffee, I would suggest for higher results, probably coffee. Kroomholes, you're not a fan of coffee? My wife isn't either. It's just one of those things where I guess once you fall into the trap, it's hard to get out. So, hey Ben, good to see you. So we're on number 3. So here we go. And actually, Ben is going to make a cameo, pop up in some of these pictures here. So number 3 is Gen Con. And I'm lumping Gen Con into Gen Con 2018 and Gen Con 2019. But really, it's all about 2018, right? So Gen Con 2018 was the first launch of Detective for consumers. That's where the fans could buy the game and play the game. That's also where we had our launch event. So that's got to be my number 3. It was my first Gen Con, so throw that into the mix. On top of that, we had Detective, which by this time, and you'll see that with number 2 and number 1, by this time, Detective had a lot of hype, a lot of buzz going for it. And man, like it was such a high, that whole event. And we had a lot of Detective. And it was gone. We sold out, I think, day 2. Maybe we kept some copies on for day 3, but oh no. And of course, a little technical difficulty. So let me go back and fix that up. But basically, the event was phenomenal. I have some really cool pictures I want to show you guys too. So bear with me. I want to get back in there because I have an awesome picture that brought Ignacio lots of joy when he saw it. It was a detective cookie cake. So I hope this picture loads because that's something you just have to see, right? So the event was like people rushed the event hall, bought Detective. The Detective was selling left and right. We had a room in the back that we had saved for people to actually play Detective, and it was just too crazy, too chaotic. We actually wouldn't be able to do that. So here's this picture. This is kind of, so like, I just remember as Gen Con 2018 as Detective Con for me. We had people celebrating it left and right. A big congratulations cake here from one of our friends of the company, because obviously the event was super successful, and the game was already getting a lot of buzz. So that was awesome. This is an event that we ran. So at the time, first big detective event, how are you going to do the Antares database? Well, you really can't for a large group, although now we kind of just tell people bring your phone. We have some tablets that we hand out, things like that. We keep it simpler, and we're playing cases that are a little bit more catered for it. But this was awesome. So what we have here is actually Ben is right here. There's Zara, there's Mary, there's Ignace. And we were the computers. So we had all these people, we kind of told them how to navigate it. And what was happening is these people were getting to a point where they needed to get a file or needed to interact with the database in some way. And boom, they had to have a runner run up and get a file from us. And we were kind of acting as the computer. So that was a lot of fun. On top of that, this event, look at this guy, so sharp. We had the helpers from Envoy dressed as detectives and investigators walking around, adding to the theme. It was really awesome. Here's a really cool finishing picture of some of those helpers, and there's Ignaz and Mary, and there's Ben. Look at that. That's computer Ben right there. So so that is my number 3, Gen Con of 2018. And just to kind of go into right here, this is 2019. This is, again, we did the same event, and still so many people came because people were constantly hearing about Detective even a year later. So as you can tell, the setup isn't as elaborate. We don't have a whole human computer setup, but it worked just fine. We're learning. So okay, so that was number 3. Any questions, comments, concerns? You'll see in the chat, Ben said I got a copy of Root that year. Absolutely. That was my first Gen Con. I was shy about doing publisher trading, and Ben said, no, you need a copy of something that you can remember this Gen Con by. And he went and got me a copy of Root. So that's awesome. Thanks, Ben. Fantastic event. So number 2. All right, so for number 2, we've got to talk about Dice Tower Con. And again, we're jumping around. So Dice Tower Con is May. Gen Con, which we just talked about, was August, right? So just kind of giving you an idea of that timeline. And then all those pictures from earlier was 2017, 2018, things like that. So Dice Tower Con was the first time that Detective was finished, done, and presented to players. So it was its first kind of reveal, right? And Ignace, you can see in this picture, he's a little bit maybe concerned, a little pensive, because he didn't know what to expect yet, right? We didn't know if people would enjoy it. We, besides internal play testing and things like that, where we didn't have just people come, here's this game, try it out. So that was the first time that happened. So let me jump into the next picture. And we started obviously before the convention gets rolling for the attendees. This picture is just one of the shots of reviewers that were kind of in the back. And let me jump back here. What you can see is we set up this wall with caution tape around it, and we had 2 tables of Detective. And we also set up a whiteboard. Actually, during this game that these reviewers were playing, and you will recognize some of the people in the pictures here, I was setting up a whiteboard with my wife, and we were able to put that in between the 2 tables there. So there's some other familiar, friendly faces. So reviewers were playing it. Reviewers were really liking it. So okay, it's good. We're getting somewhere. We're getting attention, and then gamers started coming in, right? So it's this. Oh, well, you want to try Detective? Oh, you want to come play Detective? And it's this game where you can be a detective. You can use deduction and reasoning and use an online database and try to find out what's happening in this case. And they're playing this sample case Suburbia. So if you haven't played it, don't look too closely into all the wording there. But basically, word got out, and you started hearing whispering. I remember going to the bathroom, and I remember hearing people say like, "Oh, there's this awesome game in this room over there that you can play, and it's just awesome. It's fantastic." So the word spread more and more. More people came to the room, and a lot of people. We had only 2 tables, and we don't rush people for this experience, right? You want to play 15, you want to play, an hour and a half, or so. So we had more and more people coming. So, we had to start a wait list. So people hung out in the room. They played some of our other games, looking over their shoulders, waiting for others to finish. And then we basically, I don't know if I have another picture of it. I don't. We had to add a 3rd table. So we converted one of these tables into another table, and then a 4th table. And then we still had a waiting room. People were coming, giving us their phone numbers, saying, "Text me, please, when somebody's wrapping up. We're all going to run back here." And we had a long list, multiple pages, and still we couldn't have everybody get a chance to play it. But that, that's number 2, right? That experience, the first release of Detective, seeing the hype build, seeing the attention kind of spreading organically through people just talking to others about something they've done, this experience that they were able to have. It was the first time Detective came out. So right after this, going back to my honorable mentions of BGG, of looking at BGG ratings, after this, the ratings started coming in of people who played at this event. So this is really, for me, the start of everything, except for number 1, right? Oh, that's actually on my notes. The chat just said, what about Miss Detective Award? So I actually have that a little further on. So let's that's jumping ahead to a year, but I guess I have to talk about that. So here we have, although this pile does not look all that impressive, this is a lot of notes. So we accumulated all the notes that people took during the event. Like, that's a lot of pieces of paper. That's a big stack of paper. So we kind of set it all up there as a thank you. And then this is jumping ahead to 2019. We won awards. It was fantastic. We came with LA Crimes and a whole setup. And I missed the awards ceremony. And I thought we were past that. The chat is just poking at the wounds. I'm going to say it again. This is my defense. For Dice Tower, we're special sponsors. We have our own room separate of the exhibitor hall. So we're in there getting everything set up. And when Tom and the team, the day before, they go around talking to the exhibitors, they say like, "Oh, you might want to be at the awards ceremony." No one came to the room. We were off the beaten path, so they might have forgotten it, or maybe they came by when I wasn't there and a volunteer was there and they forgot to tell me. But it's not my fault. I wasn't slacking off. I was at the room running demos, working hard. So that's my defense. I'm sticking to it. That's my alibi. But luckily, Stephen Bonacker was there to jump in on stage for me and accept the award. Stephen somehow always makes it into our events or into our announcements in some way. So yeah, even at PortalCon, he was a special guest, and he had a little picture in a special spot. Those of you who have saw that. So. Nonetheless, we got a lot of awards, and we're going to actually have the Game of the Year edition coming out, which is the next reprint of Detective, because we are running out of stock. So the next reprint is going to be a Game of the Year edition. It's going to have a banner on the bottom of all the different awards, because this game has racked up quite a few of them. Most notable is the Kennerspiel de Jar nomination. Did I pronounce that right? I think I did. And honestly, that actually should be on the list too, because that was nerve-wracking and riveting. I'm thinking that probably should be on the list as an experience, watching that happen and waiting for the results. But that's on Ignaz's list for sure. So, and yes, Captain Link was also part of the crew that year, helping out. He was crew, not our crew. He was that dice tower. But I think that's the first time we really interacted a lot with the captain. And he was coming by, just always coming by, asking if we need anything, asking if we need any help. He's the nicest guy in the world. So thank you. Thank you for all of your help, then and now. So moving on to number one, and maybe it's the most anticlimactic of them, but it would just be going back to the top, which is that detective was my call to action. It was my call to adventure, if you will. It was the thing that, this task that Ignacio presented in front of me, because what happened was we hired a very prestigious and expensive translation company in Poland, or they hired for a detective, and when they got the final documents back, it was less than stellar. Detective is a game with nuance, right? Subtlety of language, the way things are said, the words, the specific details, and there's a lot of little things like that. And also, you have to have native talk, right? There was a good example of where there was an old gangster, mobster from New Jersey, who was saying things like, I was getting hella tipsy, so I don't know what's going on, what happened that night. So things like that maybe will pull you out of the mood a little bit. So it was DEFCON 5, right? It was, we're getting close, printer is waiting, we have these documents, and we were expecting all this quality, and it was not up to par. So myself and Chevy and Vinny from Envoy and my wife Zara, we all rolled up our sleeves and had to get to work. And that was kind of, it was a lot of work. It was hard, rewarding, but that was basically my first involvement with Portal games, aside from what I was doing before on an almost volunteer level because of the job I was in. I was traveling a lot. I was in 5, 6, 7 different states a week sometimes. And I had a certain amount of downtime, meaning I could pop into a game store and talk about Portal Games, this company that I love and the games that are fantastic. So that was the transition for me. So I have to say that that's my number one, just being involved with detective at that level. And this image is up here because you can see, look at the look on my face. Doesn't that person look terrified? Because this was my first time on camera for board games in general. That was my first time meeting Eric and all these people kind of behind the scenes there, all these lights, everything. I was scared. Look at that face. I mean, I'm not much better now, but it's better. This next picture is Eric looking confused because here I am saying, yep, this is everything that we have in the box. Everything you see here, that's what comes in the box. Obviously nervous and not really know what to say, but stumbling over my words. But this was basically the first peek of Detective. These are all prototype components. We didn't have the tarot decks yet, the cards. We didn't have the leads, anything like that. So this is me doing my best to talk about Detective and put it forward. And then walking around with prototype copies, you can see here the edges are rolled because this is just a taped box. And then also right over here, you can see me, talking about Detective. This was at some other trade shows, things like that. So basically, this time of my life, really, the start of my journey, is basically Detective. So that's got to be my top number one as far as the anecdotal experience of Detective. So. That's the stories of behind the scenes. If you guys have any questions of things that were kind of happening behind the scenes or anything else like that, feel free to fire them in the chat and let me know. But aside from that, that's pretty much where Detective stands. At this point, I am not involved with Detective editing, working on the game. So now finally comes the time where maybe I'll have some new number ones. And number 2, 3, 4, maybe not. Those are all really important things, but I'll have a lot of great experiences with Detective because I'll actually be able to play it. So I'll be able to actually have those experiences that fans were talking about and coming up to me and discussing for so long. So now that I'm not involved in the editing and knowing the story, and Ignacio says this a lot, but being a playtester for Detective is a very selfless job because you're not working on a polished, finished product, and you're not getting that full Detective experience. So he always says, if we appreciate the offer, but if you really want to experience Detective, don't playtest. So finally I can take that advice and I can sit back and actually play Dig Deeper, play Petty Detectives, play the cases in season 1, and get together with my friends, now over Zoom, and put on the atmosphere, the mood, and really just get into it. So I'm super excited about that. So Detective is going to keep expanding. You might have seen some of the other streams we've done and some of my streams, my stream from yesterday. We've got Vienna Connection coming. We've got the Next in the Signature series. Season 1 does well. We're going to have season 2, more standalone cases. So the line is expanding. It's going to keep growing. Another honorable mention on here that I didn't put on is the time where Hollywood executive called me about the IP for not the IP, but the to license it for the script. What's the word? I don't know, purchase the story. So that was an interesting thing, and who knows what the future for Detective holds, because it really is wide open for this product line. So let's see if I missed anything in the chat. The camera here is right in front of the chat, so that's why I'm kind of peeking around. As far as who does the translations now, so now as far as Detective goes, it's a whole team. So we have a team of writers, we have a team of translators, editors. We have one of our contractors. Some of you may know him from conventions, but he basically masters in English, so he knows our rules. He's created these appendices for the rules internally, knows all that stuff front and back, works on some of our games. His name's Tyler Brown. You guys will have seen his name on our credits if you look at the translation and editing. Joanna's working with him on a lot of projects. So we have a whole team of people. We have an in-house editor translator for Detective specifically, so we're doing a lot of stuff with that now. So that's kind of what the situation looks like with the Detective team now, and I think Ignatz is still expanding a team of writers as well. So let's see, who does the translation to Polish of these games written by English speakers? That I don't know, but I would assume it's somebody internally. A lot of the content for Detective is actually written in English. So even, and maybe Ignatz will correct me, but I believe that even when Ignatz or Mary or anyone is creating these plots, or Przemysław Frymer, I think it's in English, because it's just, that's the biggest audience for Detective. So I think as far as it comes to translating to Polish, they have that experience, although that might be now. Obviously back then that wasn't the case, because then everything I talked about would have, the translations, everything would have not been a reality. So I'm not quite sure as far as the process of all that, but I'm pretty sure it's someone internally. So let's see what else I missed here. What is my funniest memory with Portal? Oh man, that might have to be for another stream. I'd have to, there's a lot of them and I have to rack my brain for them, but obviously with camera in front of me, my mind blanks, so I can't remember a lot of them. So that might have to be for another stream, but there's a lot of situations, believe me. So my most beloved board game ever, oh man. I mean, wouldn't say it's my most beloved, but the game that comes to mind is Talisman. I don't know if you guys have played Talisman, but that game for me is what introduced me to tabletop gaming. It was in Poland, in a rural part of Poland with my family. Then there was no internet, no Wi-Fi, no cell phone reception, and they just had a dusty old version of Talisman. And at that time, I was a huge RPG role-playing video gamer, right? Role-playing games. The type of guy who sits there in Skyrim reading the books within Skyrim about craft recipes to then go hunt herbs or gather herbs. So I played Talisman, and I said, this is like a role-playing RPG, right, game in a board. I'm running around, I'm collecting items, followers, building, leveling up. So that was what introduced me to board games. So that game has a special place in my heart. So Tyler is awesome and created the satiety token. That's how you pronounce it. Eric. Satiety. So Eric has a stream. He's our captain of Nurishima Hex, so he's been playing a lot with Troglodytes. So that is one of his running jokes that he likes to talk about, is the satiety tokens. He loves that mechanic. Hero Quest is the best board game ever, apparently, Captain Link says. I haven't played it, believe it or not. So there's that. Dawn Mage, you are late, but you are here, so thank you. But you know what? You can always replay from the beginning and catch up what you missed. So that, I think, is where we're going to wrap it up. That was Detective, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. It's always fun seeing you guys. I saw Paul is here. Hey, Paul. So I have another event coming up, which I have to reset all of the stream stuff for, because as you know, we had a little technical difficulty in the beginning where everything shut down. So what we're going to talk about next is the new releases. A lot of you may already know about it. You can pop in. It's going to be a relatively quick stream. We're just going to run through and discuss some of the things. We've got things from Portal Digital on it. We've got things for this year, and we're not going to go into 2021 in case that's the question. So that's it for me right now. Thanks for listening to my journey about Detective. It's not over yet, and hopefully we can do another one of these in a few years, and maybe it'll be a top 10. And yeah, I'm excited to see what comes next. So thank you, guys. Bye, Luke. Bye, Luke. That's what everyone's saying. I'm not saying bye, Luke. I'm just reading the chat. But thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.